Good crowd. I love that. Thanks, Ann, for that nice introduction and for that welcome. We appreciate it very much and certainly appreciate all you do in serving the constituents in your district. We have a lot of legislators here. So, oh my gosh, I'm just seeing more and more all the time. So this is awesome. I can't take credit for everything, I guess, today if I've got legislators in here. We make a great team, right? I am so proud to work with the House and the Senate. Really, really proud of everything that we've done. So thanks for being here and thanks for all you all do every single day on behalf of Iowans. It makes a difference, and I love being a part of that team. So thank you. And Casey, welcome back to Iowa.
Yes, ma'am. It's good to see you.
It is good to see you again.
I'll tell you what, the weather's pretty nice. When I left Florida, it was like 100% humidity. You know, can cut it with a knife where it's sticky. Like no matter how hard you work on your hair, it comes out like a frisball. It was nice coming to Iowa. And by the way, I remember growing up in Ohio, knee-high 4th of July with the corn. But I mean, you're way past knee-high
in Iowa, right? Of course.
You're doing it right, let me just say. But I did tell, and I'll let you, 3-year-old Mamie, my little sweetheart, she will eat corn like it's no one's business. Last night, she had a thing of corn, then she took her sister's corn, then she took her brother's corn. So I told her, I said, if we can get any sweet corn, if it's ready, we're bringing that home with us.
And it is ready, because I've already had some, and it's delicious. So, and we, had the weather drop and the humidity drop just to welcome her back, because we had some Florida weather before that. So we're great. It's great to have you back. Great to see you. We love you in our state. We want you to come back a whole bunch of times. And this is a great turnout. And so they want to get to know you a little bit better. So, as you heard Ann say, Casey and Ron are parents to 3 young children. Casey is the first lady of Florida, of course, a breast cancer survivor, which I appreciate so much. And so, yes, she did it with grace. Lots of prayers. Lots of prayers. And on top of all of that, they are campaigning across the country. So, as a mom and as a grandma, how in the world do you do it? Talk to us about how you manage it all.
It is a little bit of organized chaos, I'm not going to lie. When you see me, I'm a little bit like the duck on the water, right? The top part, everything is fine, but under the water, you're paddling like you know what. That's kind of like a day in the life. So we have a 6, 5, and a 3-year-old. So we have Mason, who's our middle one. He's our boy who's 5. We have Madison, who's 6, and Mamie, the first baby born to a sitting governor in the state of Florida in 50 years. She is a little spitfire, that one. As a matter of fact, if you turn on the song, This Girl Is on Fire, by Alicia Keys, by the way, she goes, this girl's on fida. That's what she says. This girl. But guard yourself, because if she gets on any tabletop or anything, she jumps off and expects you to grab her because she wants you to twirl around. This is a little diva. I don't know what it is about the third one. But all of a sudden, she decided one morning she was going to wake up and she's a princess, right? So now we go to bed in full regalia. She's got her princess dress, the crown, the earrings, the wand, right? And that's what she'll sleep in. She doesn't want pajamas. Oh, no, no. So we wake up in the morning. So that's our sweetheart. It's funny. Somebody outside was asking, because we had a snow cone machine, did you bring your kids with you? And I said, no. Right? Like I wanted to make subject and verb agree. You're going to see them a lot. We just the other day were in New Hampshire. We did a 4th of July parade. We had all the kids. It was pouring down rain. It was a lot of fun. But one of the reasons why I didn't want to bring the kids, or even one of them, was because I was having flashbacks of when I did a conversation similar to this with Madison. So I don't know, Moms for Liberty are here. I don't know. Go Mamas. I don't know if you remember in Tampa, you're shaking yes. In Tampa, we did the big Mamas for Liberty Summit, and I had the brilliant idea of, why don't I do the interview? And this was about the governor's reelection. Tiffany was going to interview me. And there was about 500 or 600 moms out there, and it was open to the media. It was the re-election. We probably had similar amount of cameras. There's 7 or 8 cameras there. And I said, wouldn't it be a great idea if I had a 5-year-old sit on my lap for the entire interview?
How many moms think that's a good idea? Yeah, no.
And you have 11
good for you. Yeah.
Could you imagine having and so that's why I said, but it was so funny. So everything was going well. We're having a great conversation. Madison is sitting with me. There's some things going on where she's like pulling my hand down, and I'm like trying to pull the hand back up, trying to focus. They're asking me questions, trying to answer them directly. And then all of a sudden, Madison decides that she's going to get up and she's going to walk off stage. And I thought, hallelujah, praise the Lord. Now I can focus, you know. And we get to the last question of the interview. And this is the one you got to nail, right? They're saying, what is the stake, this re-election? Why do we need to vote for your husband for re-election for governor in the state of Florida? And you want this one right? And all of a sudden, who comes trotting back out on stage is Madison DeSantis, right? And you're thinking, what in the world is going on? And I start to get this tug on my shirt sleeve, right? And do you know what she needed? She had to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
I do not remember what happened in that moment. I remember being answered a question. I remember seeing lights. I remember seeing movement. I know I was there. But you're having, moms, is one of those out-of-body experiences. Like, is this imminent? Do I need to get up? Do I need to walk her? Like, you know, is she wearing her shorts? Whatever. Like, what is happening? So when asked, was I going to bring the small child out on the road with me, I said, you know what? They'll come back. You're going to see a lot of them. But I think it's better if I'm sitting here with your great governor. By the way, great governor. Oh. Great governor.
Thank you.
I should have started with that. It's not just the free state of Florida, it's the free state of Iowa.
Yay!
So proud of what she does, and we'll get into it. But needless to say, you'll see them a little later. So just not at this moment.
Well, who was it? I saw a clip. I don't know if it was on Facebook or what. Was it Mason and Mamie who were in the little cart that were trying to escape Tallahassee? They were heading to Miami, I think, right?
So it's funny. I go out for a walk, and we're the first young family to be in the governor's residence in it's been about, since the 1970s that you had somebody there. So I go out for a walk with them. They have this little golf cart thing that we got for a couple $100 off of Walmart, not other places. And
who shops there?
And so, they decide, and they figured out how to push the buttons, to get out of the gate, because we're very blessed to live in the governor's residence, and it's a very neat experience. But what comes with it is you have the entire Florida Department of Law Enforcement security detail, right? But they figured out how to push the buttons to call the security, right? And they wanted to get out of the gate. So Mason is sitting there driving his little golf cart. Mamie, the little 3-year-old, is sitting there with him, and they bop the button, and all of a sudden the agents come on and they go, yeah, what do you want? And they're like, we're going to Miami. They're like, can you open the gate? And the agents are like, Miami? And I was like, it's fine. So they open the gate, and sure enough, the kid's going out. They're taking their little, $200 golf cart. They are going to drive it from Tallahassee, Florida, all the way to Miami, which, by the way, is 6 or 7 hours if you're going by a car, whatever. And I thought it was funny and cute. And then they tried to go out the second gate to get on, and they were serious. They were literally making a chicken run for Miami. And so, but it is always an adventure. Another very funny, quick thing I will say is that we try to protect Florida's governor's mansion. I know that you stay there, and you'd probably try to protect all of Iowa's irreplaceable history, just as we try to do in Florida. We have early 19th century French wallpaper, which is beautiful in the state dining room. It's supposed to be what Ponce de Leon saw when he landed in St. Augustine, right? There's this whole story behind how it came to be. And you should see the governor sprinting into the state dining room, because you have Mamie DeSantis with macaroni and cheese colored crayons, because they think it's a giant color by number. We have figured out, though, on early 19th century French wallpaper that magic erasers do work. They don't leave any lasting damage. We've also figured out you can get slime out of Oriental rugs if you move fast enough. Just can't let it sit in. We've also, and these are all true stories. I can go on forever. They like to throw the slime, because my daughter Madison loves slime. I don't know if your grandkids are into the slime. Yeah. They throw it up on the roof into the ceiling, and it leaves marks. So every room, if you ever come for a visit, just look, and you'll find different slime literally on the rooftop. So lots of stories about fun and trying to replace Florida's irreplaceable history, and trying not to get a bill after the term, too.
There you go. We made the mistake at giving all. We have 11 grandchildren, and we had 3 daughters. So we do girls, and out of the 11 grandchildren, we have 8 boys. So it was a whole new. By the way, they play completely different. They are wild and rambunctious. They fight, they wrestle, and we thought everybody needed a Nerf gun for Christmas, which was great because we have them all to Terrace Hill. We spend the night. But they said, Grandma, can we go down to the first floor where all of those things are at and play with the Nerf guns? And I said, no. And they go, we won't break anything, I promise. And I said, yes, you will. And no, you can't. This isn't grandma's house. You cannot do that. So I can identify just a little bit. It's not 24/7 like you are dealing with too.
It's like living in a museum a little bit, though.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the MasterCard commercial. Like at the end of the day, you get a bill, but this is priceless, you know, because there's so much history. And it's the people's house. And try explaining to a 5-year-old what the people's house means. No, it's not really our house, but we live here. But really, no, it's not our house. We have to preserve the house for the next, you know, folks to come along. It's very interesting, but it's also fun.
It is fun. It is fun. So we're getting a little serious.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to talk about some of the things that you've been working on. So first of all, I think, you know, we saw at the start of kind of saw the start of the parent revolution and really standing up for parents' rights during COVID. And Governor DeSantis kind of led the way with that. And so you're hoping to take kind of that same energy, I think, across the nation. So talk a little bit about Mamas for DeSantis, what that looks like, and kind of what you did and what you hope to do. Because I'm telling you, we're all pretty impressed you can get that many people engaged in a short time in that election cycle. So we want to hear more about how you did it and what it looks like.
Yes, ma'am. Well, we are going to launch the largest mobilization of moms and grandmothers across the United States of America to protect the innocence of our children and to protect the rights of parents. And we're excited because we're going to get everybody engaged, particularly here in Iowa. We did this when the governor was going through his reelection because we saw there was a constituency of folks who really wanted a voice. And it wasn't just Republicans, it was independents, but a lot of Democrats too, who didn't like the direction that the country was going. So we launched Mamas for DeSantis. We did a big call to action, and we had 1.1 million moms and grandmothers sign up to support the effort. And we had a huge contingency of grandmothers in the villages, I'm not going to lie. And it's one thing when your policies come after us as mamas. It's another thing when your policies come after our children. And that's when the claws come out. And so, you know, going back, and I'm going to compliment the governor here because she led with conviction. She did what she knew in her heart was right, particularly during COVID. And I think that that kind of backbone and strength is what is lacking in society. And that's why you saw so many moms come out in support of the governor in Florida and why you saw him win by a re-election of 20 points, 1.5 million votes. That's why you saw the governor win by 20 points, because they held the line in defense of people's rights, liberties, and freedoms and never backed down. And we're so proud. But it was COVID that was really what led to a lot of this parental empowerment revolution, because for the first time, parents were peering into the classroom and they did not like what was being taught. They saw this sexualized curriculum being thrust in front of 5-year-olds. You saw what they were doing with women's sports, giving biological men the opportunity to take opportunities from women in athletics who have spent their entire life doing this. The governor passed something in Florida called curriculum transparency. Basically what that was, that enabled parents to be able to go to the schools to say, I want to see what kind of curriculum you're teaching our kids. And if they didn't give that information to the parent in a timely manner, they then had a right of action to be able to sue. And it was also tied to the principal's teaching certificate. And what that led to was the discovery of pornography in a lot of these schools, in their libraries. And a lot of parents were really frustrated. I talked to other parents across the state whose children were being transitioned behind their back without their consent or their knowledge. So far as there's a lady in Tallahassee, right where we live, January Littlejohn, and her daughter was being transitioned. They were changing her name behind her mother's back. They were asking her, you know, you want to be called a boy or a girl? What bathroom do you want to use? And this isn't okay in this time in society. It's not okay to take the rights of parents away from them. And so that's why the governor and myself have stood strong. It also is safe communities too. When you look at defunding law enforcement, moms want to ensure that their kids can walk home from school safely. And if you're taking the resources away from the community and preventing that, that's a problem. So we have been able to mobilize a lot of moms, and I will say too, and I'm sure you heard this, Governor, when you were elected, don't rock the boat. You know, Governor DeSantis, you live in a swing state. You know, you only won by 0.4% in the first election, 32,000 votes in a state of 22 million. You know, you try to do anything too bold, they're going to come after you. You're not going to win re-election. He rejected that. He led with principle, courage, and conviction. And like I said, he won by 1.5 million votes. But you know what? He won women by nearly 10 points, the first Republican governor in nearly 50 years to do that. He won more than 50% of single women. And these policies of standing up for our families, standing up for moms and dads, and standing up in defense of the innocence of our children, it resonates across parties. He was able to win 20% of independents and 30% of Hispanics. So never back down and always stay true to what you believe in, because at the end of the day, you look at yourself in the mirror and you say, I did it right. I wake up in the morning and I know I'm doing it for the right reasons for our children and for our families.
Yay. I could not agree more. Tell the people what you're going to do and follow through with it and be bold and do what you need to do. So I could not agree more. You know, so you guys are out there kind of front and center. Everybody's looking at what you're doing. Everybody's got a comment on what you're doing. How do you stay focused, and how do you block out kind of just the criticism that just unfolds, especially in today's society with social media and with just all of the attacks coming at you from every single angle? You talked about just a little bit, but how do you tune that out and stay focused, and really, what drives you?
I should ask you that question. Honestly, like, she got attacked just like Ron did in Florida. And she didn't back down. She held the line.
Meltdowns with the media is what I saw sometimes. It's like, oh, for heaven's sakes. But
yeah,
talk to us a little bit about that.
But, you know, as I've traveled Iowa, I'm seeing a lot of similarities really quickly about Florida and Iowa. The people have your back, despite what the corporate media says, despite what the left is saying, despite what some Republicans who might not like what you're doing are saying. The people, at the end of the day, want a restoration of sanity. They want common sense. They want truth. And they want somebody with a backbone and who isn't afraid to stand up.
They are so tired of people caving. Tell them what you're going to do, and then go do it, right? Common sense. It's so easy. They make it complicated, I think, sometimes, and we don't need to. Yeah.
Don't you feel like that's a novel concept?
Yeah.
Like, you're a rarity. You know that?
Yeah.
Like, you and the governor. Like, you see so many politicians that go out and they wax poetic and they say they're going to do all these wonderful things, and when they get up to places like Washington, D.C., they go rogue, they go native, they care more about what's happening in the Beltway press than staying true to their convictions and what they told the people that they would do. And that's why your governor is so impressive and so well respected in your state. And that's why Ron is receiving, I think, the praise across the nation that he's doing, because at the end of the day, you know, you're doing what you know in your heart is right, and you're backing down, and the people appreciate that. So how do I handle the criticism? We'll see how the end of this day turns out, right? Not every day you get to sit down with the governor of Iowa. You know, so I have a dear friend in Florida who's like, and I don't want to get her age wrong because she'll probably get mad at me, but she's 82 years old. 83, 82, round down, 80 years old. And she is a dear friend and adult, and she was friends with Margaret Thatcher. And she had the opportunity to ask Margaret Thatcher that very same question when she asked her, how do you respond to all of the negative criticisms and everything that you get? And I'll try to get the accent right a little bit, but she said to my friend, and my friend's name is Gay, and she goes, "Gay dear, I don't read it." And you know what? When she told me that, I'm like, yep, you know what? I don't read it. Sure, there's a lot of people say, I saw a not so great article about you and X, Y, and Z, and it's, you know, it's not true and whatever, you pass it along, but I'm not going to read any of that stuff, because at the end of the day, you know, you just stand up for truth and decency and integrity and character and morals, and you know, I don't care. And Governor, I will say this. I have a very unique perspective on life. Many of you might not know my story. Maybe some of you do. You know, you talked about at the top about being a cancer survivor. Well, there was a time in my life where I didn't know if I was going to see my kids graduate from kindergarten, let alone high school. And I was able to beat that back, and I had some really long, difficult battles. As a matter of fact, I remember, and the governor was getting criticized for doing this with me, but I remember every single chemotherapy appointment that I went to, and there were 6 of them, and they were long, and they were very hard, and I had to wear this dumb cold cap on my head that was like an ice cube. You're like in an igloo for 6 or 7 hours, and he held my hand during every single one of them, and he never left my side. And I'll tell you what, when you go through something like that, and you're in the middle of the night, scared, and you don't know what's going to happen, and you crawl into bed with your kids, and you're getting hope for tomorrow that you can have some more time with them, and then you realize that God has given you more opportunity to be able to live. When you're given that opportunity in life, what do you do with it? Do I care what a headline says? No. I care about protecting the innocence of my children and your children. Never. As long as I have breath in my body, I will go out and I will fight for Ron DeSantis, not because he's my husband, that is a part of it, but it's because I believe in him in every ounce of my being. If you want somebody to go up to Washington, D.C. to clean house, to be able to put this country back on the trajectory where we are talking about our rights coming from our Creator and our government being put in place to protect our rights that are ours, he is the man to do it. And if I have to crisscross this country, I'll do it.
Well, Ann talked about it a little bit. Amen. And second chances, right? And then thanks for all the prayers, because that makes a big difference too. I say that all the time too. I mean, I feel it. I felt it. I can't tell you how much we both appreciate the prayers, not only over us and our spouses, but our children and our family. I appreciate that a lot. Ann talked about it a little bit, and you just hit on just getting stuff done, somebody hitting the ground. I mean, I always say I didn't run to preserve the status quo. I ran to get things done, and I am, same thing, a woman on a mission, and I think you're a woman on a mission too. But I mean, just the response to the latest hurricane. I mean, we dealt with the derecho, and we, you know, all of us have had, state leaders have had to deal with natural disasters and the impact of that. But the bridge that was out, that was replaced, talk a little bit about that. And then you really stepped into the role too. So it was a team effort out there, really supporting Floridians. Can you talk just about, I can't even imagine headquarters and just this how you enacted the things that you did that quick. And we've done it, and we've got a great team, but that's a big state.
Yeah, well, it was quite the hurricane to come through Hurricane Ian, and I remember spending a lot of time in the EOG, and you're watching the projections because, you know, you're looking at 12 hours before shifts here and there, and it went south right at the last minute, and, you know, there was a lot of damage done to that area. There were a lot of people that lost everything. There are a lot of people who have, a lot of Iowans, by the way, live in Southwest Florida, particularly in Fort Myers area, and so that was everything that they had. So one of the things, obviously, the governor was already in advance of that, making sure that he had the resources ready to deploy, right? It's not like you wait until after the hurricane hits and then you look at each other like, what do you do? No, he was already staging. He had 40,000 linesmen literally coming in from all over the country, because one of the things you have to do right away is get the power back on. And so he did that, and making sure that we're cleaning the roads. And of course, they did the evacuation efforts and looking out for people who are on Pine Island and Sanibel Island, making helicopter missions going in there. I actually went in there on one of the choppers. We were delivering water to Pine Island, and just seeing, honestly, it was really, it was an extremely difficult time for Floridians, but at the same time, it gave you a lot of hope and faith in our country because of just the way the people rallied together. Nobody cared political affiliation. Nobody cared about any of that. We were in it for Americans. We were in it for Floridians, and we were there to support one another. And I really appreciate, this is what your governor does, and this is what Ron does as well. There's a lot of people out there in elected office that like to pass the buck, right? They don't ever like to take accountability for anything. They like to subcontract their leadership to, you know, unaccountable bureaucracies and then say, well, my hands are tied. I can't do it. You know, it's up to this guy. That is not your governor, and that is not Ron. And so when there was a bridge going to Pine Island and Sanibel completely blown out, the people on the ground were asking for help. And it was, I believe it was federal. And they were saying, we can't do anything, it's going to take 6 months. And the people on the island were like, well, what are we going to do? That's everything. My wallet's over there, my pictures are over there, my kids' clothes are over there, the bottles are over there. Like, what, you know, I need to get across. What am I going to do, take a boat? And so you say, you know what, I got it. I'll take care of it. We're not going to allow bureaucracy and red tape to get in the way of people being able to live their lives. So he mobilized his folks, he swooped them in. A bridge that they said wouldn't be built for 6 months, they did in 3 days. They rebuilt the bridge to Pine Island. And the one next to it in Sanibel, also for folks out there, they were able to rebuild that in 2 weeks. And so we always say, you know, we're having a problem right now with our southern border, For whatever reason, they can't build the wall. There's no intent on the part of the Biden administration to even recognize that there's a problem down there. But the governor has always said, listen, I built a bridge in 3 days. If you need help at the southern border, I'll send my guys and gals in there and they'll get it done lickety-split. So let's be serious.
I love it. And I asked Casey about that because what we see happening with this administration and just the chaos and the overreach and crisis that we live every single day, we need somebody that's going to step in and implement and get things done to get this country back on track. So one of the other things that I've learned that you've done that we keep every time I see her, I want to learn more about it because it's just something I want to bring to Iowa that I'm really impressed with, and that's your Hope Florida initiative, where you've really worked with the faith community and the private sector, along with like Health and Human Services, to really expand the reach and just the partnership between the faith community, the private sector, and government, and what you've been able to do with that, I think is really phenomenal. And this has kind of been your deal. So you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I really want to know I want to hear what she's doing. And I got my legislators here because we want to implement something very similar. So if I just pick up this pen and take some notes while you're talking, that's what's going on here. Anne's taking notes. I can see it. Go.
Let me just say it's very humbling when you have the governor over here saying that you want to take notes on something that you've been able to be a part of. And it goes back to the general philosophy of when you have the opportunity to make a difference, what do you do with it? And so as First Lady of the state of Florida, I really wanted to go out and get my hands dirty. I wanted to learn about the issues. And, the governor was super supportive. Yeah, go for it. Go, do what you know when your heart is right. That's our philosophy. So I went all over the state of Florida, so northeast, northwest. I went into Orlando, then I went down into the southwest part of Naples, Miami, and kind of circled my way back up through Palm Beach, just holding listening sessions, particularly with people in the child welfare sphere. I wanted to understand more about how it operated, and we had some of the key stakeholders on the ground. And one thing that I learned very quickly is there are a lot of great people who are doing wonderful things, but it's very siloed. You had the nonprofits here, you had the faith-based community over here, you had state government over here, you had the private sector here, you had local government, and there was very little communication or collaboration on the best interests and well-being of some of the people who are most in need. There's got to be a better way of doing this. And also going out, and I would do various press conferences and what have you, and I had somebody ask me once, they said, well, you're just not spending enough money. It's per capita. Look at where Florida is related to other states. But it almost gets to the point of being the law of diminishing returns. The more you throw something at a problem, the less efficient, accountable it becomes. And so we have to think differently. We have all of these great folks that are willing to do wonderful things. How do we make the connection? So we looked at it differently. We decided we were going to launch Hope Florida Pathway to Prosperity and Economic Self-Sufficiency. And what that is within the Department of Children and Families, so that's the entity, the agency that really services the child welfare sphere. So single moms battling substance abuse, pregnant moms who are battling substance abuse, or you had single moms in general, you had foster and adoptive families, and they would traditionally, prior to this, would come into this, quote, system. If they needed help, they would get TANF grants or they would get SNAP public assistance, and then basically would say, okay, well, we'll see you on your way. Hope it goes well. And there was really no accountability or anything to how are they doing? Are they doing well? Are we helping them on a path to economic self-sufficiency? So we started with navigators within the child welfare system. And so basically when somebody comes in, instead of saying, here's your check, we'll see you in 6 months, we say, how can we help you? What are some of your immediate needs? And we started looking out at the nonprofits at the community level. This is a statewide effort, but it's implemented in the community. So if we found that there was a nonprofit that helped that single mom, we made a connection and got out of the way. What is fascinating, though, is if we found that there wasn't any nonprofits on the local level that could support, we then tapped into, the first state to do this at scale, tapped into our faith-based community. We use a technology called Care Portals. So you have these Hope Navigators who literally will be talking to a single mom, and she'll say, I'm having a hard time putting food on the table. I need bunk beds and mattresses. Can you help? What we do, our navigators literally input that into a system. That goes out immediately to our faith-based community. They see that in real time, either an email or an app. They say, you know, they read it, you know, she needs bunk beds, mattresses, food, can you help, question mark. They click comply, and then what happens is they literally show up on her front doorstep with meals, bunk beds, and mattresses. And so what we've done, what government has done, has made a connection and then gotten out of the way. Because government should never be a top-down approach. It should be limited and defined and tapped into all of the good people who are already doing wonderful things. We're the first state also to take that care portal technology and also open it up to the private sector. So now, if the faith-based community, but by the way, they're all meeting these needs, which is fascinating. I find it's a competition amongst the churches and the synagogues and what have you, because they see it come in real time and they're like, we got it, and then they go. But we've also opened it to the private sector. So if you have an Italian restaurant down the road and they have 30 people and they see it and they want to fundraise and do the bunk beds and show up with some lasagna on someone's front doorstep, they now have the opportunity to do that, which is very cool. We find that 80% of those inputs going into the care portal are only issued and executed upon once. And you would think, well, that single mom probably has more needs, right, than just food and bunk beds and mattresses. But what you have found is that the community now realizes that that single mom is there. They were always doing wonderful things, but it took government to make the connection to be able to communicate and collaborate and get out of the way. So that's really great. Since we've implemented this, by the way, and I'll get into how we get to economic self-sufficiency, but since we implemented this in 2021, we have either partially or fully gotten people off of government assistance to the tune of 6,600 people. And it's not about taking something away. It is a better lot in life for them. When you see these moms who are in their kitchen crying because they're cooking meals for the first time in their home for their children are taking part in school choice opportunities, like, you know, you're making a difference and they're doing well. So meeting immediate needs is important, but the economic self-sufficiency piece is also important. And I find you could have the best resources in the world, but if you don't know they exist, what good are they? And, you know, 6, 5, and 3, I can't keep my head on straight. Imagine being a single mom trying to navigate a job, trying to pick her kids up from school, helping them with their homework, trying to take care of the bills, you know, Biden inflation, everything. You know, so we wanted to be able to provide this pathway, and so we have things like in the Department of Education. I know you've done a lot there with vocational and technical and paid apprenticeships. We've done that in Florida, so piecing that together to be able to tell that single mom, hey, there's paid apprenticeships where you can get paid on the job and get trades and training and all of that. We also have things in the Department of Economic Opportunity, and that basically is providing connections with CareerSource and various private sector entities. We've partnered with the private sector. We've said, hey, listen, you know, this single mom would love a job, but you know what? She can't work a 9 to 5 because she would really like to be able to be there at 3 o'clock to pick up her kids. Can you help us with that? And they're like, yes, of course we'll sign on and support. We want somebody good working for us. So it's putting together the pieces. And the other thing that I think is really fantastic about this initiative, the governor has put $70 million in reoccurring funds in the budget for the fatherhood initiative. So when you have a single mom who's coming in, you have this navigator who, again, meeting immediate needs, guiding people on a pathway to economic self-sufficiency. You also are facilitating contacts with different community organizations that are providing mentorship opportunities, like Take a Child Fishing or Big Brothers and Big Sisters. Because I can tell you the one thing that you can do to change the trajectory of a child's life when they're coming especially from troubled beginnings where they've been through a lot of abuse or neglect or what have you, is to provide mentorship. And there's a program, the Department of Juvenile Justice in the state of Florida, an agency, and they have a ambassadors program, a youth ambassadors program. And what that program basically is kids who have been through the juvenile justice system, they've had really tough upbringings, but they come through this program and they're able to meet with the governor and myself because they've excelled unlike anybody ever thought was possible. They are class presidents. They are starting their own businesses. They are going to college for the first time. And I ask every single one of them the exact same question. Every time they walk through the door, I say, what was it that turned your life around? What was it that made you come from what you went through and you're sitting in the governor's mansion. What is it? And they all tell me the exact same thing. They say somebody at some point in my life took value in me, gave me worth, gave me purpose, and literally transformed their lives. And so if we can do that in the midst of helping, let's say, the single mom or anyone who's coming into the system on a pathway to economic self-sufficiency, and you're providing mentorship opportunities for a kid and getting government out of the way, that's a win. That philosophical approach about how we look at government in the Department of Children and Families is how we're approaching the Department of Veterans Affairs. Same philosophy, harnessing the horsepower of everybody on the ground. And you know what? When you're looking at some of our congregations, a lot of people want to help the child welfare sphere, but there's a lot of people who they think it is their mission to help veterans, and we are facilitating them to be able to do God's work and help some of our great veterans. And so you're doing that with the Agency for People with Unique Abilities and Disabilities. You're doing that now with the Agency for Department of Juvenile Justice. You're doing it with our great Elders Affairs Agency. By the way, I said one of the greatest things that we have in the state of Florida, an untapped resource, is our faith-based community. The other big untapped resource that we need to be able to harness the horsepower of is our retiree community. We have so many people coming down with a wealth of experience and knowledge. How do we harness that horsepower to be able to help people in need? So it's all
I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
Yes, ma'am.
That's why we're not taxing retirement income anymore, because I was tired of sending them down to Florida. We're going to keep them. Okay. I did tell the governor he can have them in January and February for that's it, because it is a little chilly here in those months. But we're taking his lead, and we're no longer taxing retirement income because amen, sister. They are a valuable asset, and we want to keep them in the state. They are awesome. Okay, now you tell us what you're doing with them, but it's awesome. Okay.
No, you know, it's funny, though. When I travel around the state, there are a lot of people who have come from places like California. They do not want to go back. They come from places like New York. They do not want to go back. They relocate and come to Florida. Now, Iowans, okay, now they come down to Southwest Florida. They are excited to go back to Iowa because they're proud of what their governor has done.
But tell us what you're doing. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I could miss an opportunity to brag. Okay.
No, you know, sometimes I just talk a lot because I'm so super excited to talk to somebody older than 5. You know, I'm not gonna, but I think, but this is a conversation that we need to be having about the proper role of government. What is government doing? Since the Great Society, how much money have we spent? Trillions of dollars, and where's the return on our investment? How are we helping good people who are in need? Let's look at a philosophical, different approach to government. Let's change the structure of it. Let's be facilitators and communicators between all of the good people doing God's work, all of the retirees. Let's harness that horsepower, make a connection, and then get the heck out of the way. That's what I think government should be doing.
Yay. So, working with the legislature, and then I want to get back to Mamas for DeSantis and how they can. But so we did the same thing. I so appreciate that, and I appreciate how you started with hope, and then you've taken that and you've applied it to the veterans and so many other areas in the state. I think it's, and I loved when you talked about the competition. Then everybody wants to be engaged, and it's kind of like with governors. You know, we're always like, what are they doing down in Florida? We got that done before they did, right? Well, they beat us on that one, but we should do it. It's just competition is great because you all win when we are competing to improve our state. So, but what we did this last legislative session that I'm really proud of, so thank you, legislators, this was huge. I actually cut 21 agencies from my cabinet. We went from 37 down to 16. Same thing. Too much government. It's ridiculous. It gets in the way. Projected $214 million savings over 4 years. I think that's conservative. I think we'll see way more than that. And we're more efficient and effective. So you are so right to bring in and coordinate and do what you're doing. It works, and it's just the right philosophy, right? So I appreciate it.
But what can I say about your governor is that she has the courage and strength to do this. There's not a lot of governors that come in who want to take on the bureaucracy, right? There's a lot of entrenched folks who have been there for a long time, and it takes somebody with a little bit of chutzpah to come in and say, you know, what at the end of the day, how are we maximizing the taxpayer dollar to benefit the citizens that we represent? Because you have to go in with taxation and literally envision yourself taking money out of somebody's wallet, putting it into the coffers of the government, and say that that's being well spent. And I just think that that's very refreshing that you have somebody who's not afraid to be able to take on the battles and win. And I'll tell you, another game changer that you've had was the school choice. choice.
Yay!
It's a big deal.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you. Same thing. Talk about engaged moms and grandmas and grandpas and dads. Wow, right?
Across the country.
Across
I
the
mean,
country.
honestly, it's like you should not be destined to the zip code that you live in for your opportunities to live up to your God-given potential. It should be up to the parents to decide what education they think are best for their children. And government should, again, get out of the way. But what I've found is there's a nice competitive model. If you have charter schools and you have homeschooling and you have private schools and you have public schools and there's a competition for students, you find everybody does well because they're all wanting to compete. And at the end of the day, we are looking for the return on the investments of the students. We want them to be able to be happy, which is first and foremost, and productive in society. So what education, parents, do you think is best for your child and facilitating that? And that is huge. And I understand that you guys had envisioned in the legislature a certain number of folks who would be partaking, and I think you're exceeding expectations.
Oh, we exceeded expectations. It's been awesome. We were processing one application every 12 seconds in the first several days of opening up. We did it in a month, and we had projected about 14,500, and we're over 17,500 right now. 29,000 have gone on, and just thinking that was just in a month. So exceeded expectation. There's a lot of interest there, and I want to reiterate something that you said because I think this is so important. We want to elevate all of education, and we believe that competition will do that. You know, I'm a product of a public school. I raised our 3 daughters in a public school. Our grandchildren are going there, but parents ultimately should be the decision makers, and we can pass all the other bills that deal with indoctrination and sexualization and all of that, but there's still ways they can get around it. But ultimately, parental choice, that is the game changer. That will change everything. So you've been at it a lot longer than we have, but.
No, well, I will say I have a friend who brought their family down from New York, and they specifically were seeking out the public schools, even though they, were thinking about doing the private, and they looked at other options. And the question was, well, what made you ultimately decide on the public school in this area of Florida? And she said, well, because I know that there are protections in place, like the curriculum transparency,
Yes.
that I know that they're going to be accountable. I can see what's being taught in the schools. I know that they're going to have opportunities for my girls to be able to compete in sports. And so you look at that. They're not doing the woke Olympics, by the way, in the state of Florida. There's no, discrimination if you use the wrong pronoun. So that's a big game changer for people moving to Florida too.
I agree. Okay,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
I think as I got the one question. That's something. So let's bring it back to where we started. Kind of talk a little bit again about Mamas for DeSantis and how do people get engaged and how do they learn more about it and just kind of let us know what we need to do.
Well, like I said, we're mobilizing millions of moms and grandmothers across the United States of America in defense of the innocence of our children and protecting the rights of parents. There are a lot of bad things going on, but I can tell you with what Governor DeSantis has done, he will lead the charge and he will clean house and he will ensure that parents have the rights to be able to make the decisions that they think best for their family. This is, I think, when we look at the election coming up, I think one of the things that we should be talking about, and we saw this with COVID, with the federal government coming in and trying to usurp the rights of the individuals. I mean, this is about a constitutional system and having the conversation of, do we agree with what our founders said when they created this nation? And again, that was taxation without representation, right? They were dissenting from a faraway king because they didn't like that. But look at what's happening in the United States of America because of COVID. Are we a government that can be run by we, the people? Do our rights ultimately come from our Creator? Is government put in place to be able to protect those rights in a limited capacity? That's one of the fundamental conversations that we need to be having this election. You have to have somebody who understands that, and all the while is standing up in defense of our children and understanding that you have an unaccountable bureaucracy. You go in on day one and you clean house. If you're not in it for the right and the best interests of the people of this state, you go in and you get them out. And I know that the governor is going to do that, but we need every mom and grandmother, and dads and grandpas too, across the United States to help us. So you can go to mamasfordesantis.com. You can go to rondesantis.com. You can also text mamas to 512345. Tell everybody, get engaged, because I believe that grandmamas and mamas are going to be the game changer of this election, and we are excited that you're going to be a part of it. So God bless you, Iowa. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you to your great governor.
Let's give it up for Casey DeSantis. Woo!